A tiny Caribbean island, turquoise water, white sand beaches, and a murder rate so catastrophic that the entire population should, by any reasonable calculation, have been wiped out somewhere around Series 4. Death in Paradise has been running since 2011. 15 series, over 100 episodes. The BBC's most-watched detective drama for years running. And at the center of it all, a rotating cast of British detectives who arrive on the fictional island of St. Marie, solve murders, fall in love with the place, and then leave. Every single one of them. But here's what most fans don't know. Behind the sunshine and the rum punch and the perfectly timed plot twists lies a story far more surprising than any murder the show has ever produced. A lead actor who left because he couldn't stop sweating. A fictional island that doesn't exist. And a lizard with his own secret name that has appeared in every single episode since the very beginning. Stay with us, because the real story of Death in Paradise is more fascinating than anything that has ever happened on St. Marie. Fact 1. St. Marie doesn't exist. Let's start with the fact that surprises people most. The island of St. Marie, where every murder is committed, every detective struggles with the heat, and every episode ends with a satisfying explanation in the police station, does not exist. Death in Paradise is filmed entirely on Guadeloupe, a real French overseas territory in the southern Caribbean. The fictional police station of Sainte Marie is actually the Church of St. Peter and St. Paul in the picturesque fishing village of Déchet. Catherine's Bar, where the detectives drink and philosophize after solving each murder, is a real restaurant called Le Madras, right by the water in the same village. Fans who visit Guadeloupe specifically to find Sainte Marie discover that the island exists, but the name doesn't. Which, when you think about it, is exactly the kind of mystery the show's detectives would enjoy. Fact 2. Ben Miller left because of the heat. The first detective to arrive on St. Marie was D.I. Richard Poole, played by Ben Miller. Uptight, formal, permanently overdressed. A man who insisted on wearing a full-length British wool suit in tropical Caribbean heat because that was the character, and the character would not bend to the climate. Ben Miller left after 2 series. The official reason was creative. He felt the character's story had run its course. The unofficial reason, confirmed in various interviews over the years, was considerably more physical. The combination of Caribbean humidity and a full wool suit, worn in sustained tropical heat across multiple series of filming, was simply not something the human body was designed to endure for extended periods. He was, by multiple accounts, permanently and comprehensively drenched. Fact 3. Kris Marshall left to see his family. When Ben Miller departed, Kris Marshall arrived as D.I. Humphrey Goodman, a warmer, more bumbling, more openly enthusiastic replacement who won over fans within episodes. He stayed for 3.5 series, then he left too. His reason was straightforward and entirely sympathetic. Filming Death in Paradise requires spending approximately 6 months of every year in Guadeloupe. For an actor with a family in the UK, that sustained separation became, over time, simply too much. He has said directly that he was not seeing enough of his children, and so, despite the sunshine and the fans and the success, he walked away from one of the most enviable filming locations on Earth to be at home. Fact 4. The show is a joint British-French production. Here is the fact that most British viewers never realize. Death in Paradise is not purely a BBC production. It is a joint collaboration between the BBC and France 2, the French national broadcaster. This is why the show is set on a fictional island with both British and French colonial history, why the supporting cast includes French-speaking characters, and why the show has consistently performed as well in France as it has in the United Kingdom. The BBC brings the British detective formula. France 2 brings the Caribbean setting and the French-speaking world's audience. The result is one of the most internationally successful co-productions in the history of British television. Fact 5. The show was the BBC's most-watched drama for years. Death in Paradise is frequently described as a cozy, undemanding detective show, pleasant enough, but not quite in the same league as the prestige dramas that attract awards attention. The viewing figures tell a different story. For multiple consecutive years, Death in Paradise was the most-watched drama on BBC One. In some series, it drew audiences of over 10 million viewers per episode in the UK alone. a figure that most prestige dramas could only dream of. Critics called it unremarkable. Audiences made it one of the most consistently popular shows on British television. Subscribe if you want more, there's plenty more where this came from. Fact 6. A lizard has appeared in every episode. Here is the detail that devoted fans have known for years, and that casual viewers have entirely missed. A small lizard, known behind the scenes as Harry, has appeared in virtually every single episode of Death in Paradise since the very first series. He lives on the set in Guadeloupe and has simply never left. Cast members have spoken about him warmly over the years, describing him as the show's most consistent cast member. Harry the Lizard has appeared in more episodes of Death in Paradise than any actor who has ever worked on the show. He has outlasted 4 lead detectives, dozens of guest stars, and an entire supporting cast. He has never been given a screen credit. He has never asked for a pay rise. Fact 7. Ben Miller came back for a secret cameo. 7 years after his character was killed off with an ice pick in the opening minutes of Series 3, Ben Miller returned to Death in Paradise for a secret cameo appearance in the show's 10th anniversary series. He has described the experience as unexpectedly emotional, driving straight to set on the day he arrived in Guadeloupe, not because he was scheduled to work, but simply because he felt the pull of the crew and cast he had worked with for 3 years. The man who left because of heat exhaustion and an impractical wool suit was so moved by returning that he turned up early, uninvited, just to be there. Fact 8. The show survived COVID by the narrowest of margins. When the global pandemic hit in 2020, Death in Paradise was preparing to film its 10th series. The production was one of the first British television dramas to attempt filming again after the initial lockdowns. It succeeded, but only barely. Several episodes were still being edited in the same week they were due to be broadcast, owing to a filming schedule so compressed that the production team was essentially completing episodes in real time. British audiences watched Death in Paradise without ever knowing that the team responsible for it was finishing the show as fast as people were watching it. Fact 9. Guest stars come partly for the location. One of the show's consistent advantages in attracting high-quality guest performers has been refreshingly straightforward. A guest role on Death in Paradise means spending time filming in the Caribbean. Series 3 guest star Tristan Gemmell described being offered the part as winning the lottery for actors. Over 15 series, the guest cast has included some of the finest character actors in British television, many of whom accepted the role partly for the story and partly for the opportunity to spend several weeks in Guadeloupe on what amounted to a working holiday. The island that doesn't exist has been one of the show's most effective casting tools. Fact 10. The show created its own spin-off universe. Death in Paradise has proven successful enough to generate its own extended universe. Beyond Paradise, a spin-off series following Kris Marshall's character Humphrey Goodman after he left St. Marie, launched on BBC One in 2023 and was immediately renewed for further series. It relocated the format to rural England, replacing Caribbean heat with British countryside and retaining the cozy Murder of the Week structure that made the original so popular. A show about a fictional Caribbean island spawned a spin-off set in the English countryside. Both were hits. The Death in Paradise universe is, at this point, genuinely substantial. Fact 11. The show launched tourism to Guadeloupe. The impact of Death in Paradise on tourism to Guadeloupe has been measurable and significant. Fans travel specifically to the island to visit filming locations, the police station church, Catherine's Bar, the botanical gardens where Ben Miller's character met his end with an ice pick. Unofficial and official tours now operate across the island, driving fans through locations that have appeared in over 100 episodes. One American viewer of the show was so taken with Guadeloupe that he convinced his wife to take their Caribbean holiday there specifically, then drove from one end of the island to the other to find the fictional police station. He found it inside a real church, next to a real priest who had presumably seen considerably stranger things. Fact 12. Don Warrington was thought to have left, but hadn't. In 2024, it was announced that Don Warrington's character, Commissioner Selwyn Patterson, the show's longest-serving cast member, was leaving St. Marie due to a family crisis. Fan reaction was immediate and overwhelmingly negative. Social media lit up with dismay. Many viewers assumed the departure was permanent. When Series 15 began in January 2026, Selwyn was back. Warrington later explained that there had been no behind-the-scenes drama. It was simply a storyline. The producers had wanted to explore what a crisis might look like for the character. Warrington has said he was genuinely touched to discover how much audiences cared about his character. After 15 series, he found it rather nice to be liked. Fact 13. The show has had 5 different lead detectives. Let's put the show's extraordinary cast turnover in full perspective. In 15 series, Death in Paradise has had 5 different lead detectives. Ben Miller as D.I. Richard Poole, Kris Marshall as D.I. Humphrey Goodman, Ardal O'Hanlon as D.I. Jack Mooney, Ralph Little as D.I. Neville Parker, and Don Gile, who joined as D.I. Mervyn Wilson in Series 14 and continues in the role. No other long-running British detective drama has replaced its lead this many times and survived, let alone continued to grow its audience. Fact 14. Ardal O'Hanlon came from Father Ted. When Kris Marshall departed, the producers needed a replacement who could carry the show's blend of gentle comedy and genuine mystery. They cast Ardal O'Hanlon, best known internationally as Dougal Maguire, in the beloved Irish sitcom Father Ted. A comedian by background, O'Hanlon brought a warmth and comic timing to the role of D.I. Jack Mooney that distinguished his version of the character from every detective who had come before him. He has spoken about his time on the show warmly, describing how, by his second series, he had learned the rhythms of Guadeloupe well enough to know its pleasures and its pitfalls. He stayed for 3 series before making way for Ralph Little. Fact 15. The show is now in its 15th series, with no end in sight. Death in Paradise began in 2011, with a simple premise. A British detective, reluctantly stationed on a Caribbean island, solving murders he never expected to encounter. 15 series later, the formula remains essentially unchanged. A new British detective arrives on St. Marie. A murder is committed. The local police team investigate. The detective gathers the suspects in a room and explains, with increasing precision, exactly how and why the impossible crime was committed. It has worked, every single time, for 15 years. Critics have questioned whether the format can sustain itself. The audience has refused to agree. Death in Paradise continues. Harry the Lizard is still on set. And somewhere on the fictional island of St. Marie, which is actually a fishing village in Guadeloupe, someone is about to commit a very carefully planned murder that a British detective will solve before the end credits roll. It has been that way since 2011. There is no particular reason to think it will stop anytime soon. And those are 15 shocking facts about one of the BBC's most enduring, most underrated, and most quietly brilliant detective dramas. A show that has replaced its lead 5 times, survived a pandemic, launched a spin-off universe, and kept a lizard employed for 15 years. If you are a true Death in Paradise fan, this channel was made for you. Subscribe, and we will see you next time.